Super. So we are live, and I have the pleasure to be joined by Richie and Matthew Hawtin. Hey guys, how are you doing?
Good. How you
Good,
doing?
thanks. Thanks for having us.
Multiple time zones.
Yeah, we managed. We managed with we have London, Europe, Berlin. Am I right?
Berlin, yeah.
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 And the US. Where are you at, Matthew? Actually.
I'm just outside Detroit.
Okay, amazing. Yeah. Well, very happy to have you here. Obviously, we just released your teaser of your upcoming launch on Async Music on Monday. So very excited about that. But before we kind of go into the details of your project and what it's all about, maybe you can quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, you want to go, Matt?
Well, I think older brothers go first, right?
Oh yeah, I'm older. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm Richie Hawtin. I've been in. I guess my main thing that I do is an electronic musician and a DJ, and I've been doing that since I was a teenager, since the late '80s, and running record labels, just being part of the electronic music community, recording under the name Plastic Man and Fuse, which we'll talk about. And just being a kid who was fascinated by technology and creativity, and that has just taken me from music and then into the world of NFTs and blockchain and beyond.
Amazing, and we'll definitely go into it. And you, Matthew?
Yeah, my name's Matthew. Been an artist for I'd say it's been on for 30 years. Not that I want to say my age, but we were both born in England. We were raised in Canada, Windsor, Ontario. So I'm living now in Detroit, which is basically Windsor and Detroit are border towns. So raised in Canada, but we spent a lot of time in Detroit, and that's where we were introduced to electronic music, Detroit techno. So Rich took a more musical route artistically when I focus more on the visuals. So my background is painting, but also I've worked in printmaking, and I guess my work is more kind of sculptural in nature. So I'm sort of a traditional physical artist, but over the past few years, it's kind of transitioned into different mediums, and then NFTs came up, and it was just kind of a whole new realm to explore. So that's kind of led us to this moment, I think, which is really exciting.
Yeah, when we were kids, Math knew he was an artist before I did. I was like trying lots of different things, and I wanted to be a cinematographer, then special effects. I guess it was some kind of creative, but Math really had a direction, and we were really close, and spent a lot of time in our teenage years. And music was a common goal, that we loved techno and going out clubbing together, and I think one of the things that we loved about techno, and still do, was that it was a form of music. One, back then nobody knew it, so it was a real cool ecosystem, or like DIY culture, but it was always very future focused, and I think Math's and I's interest about the future kind of got embodied in some of our early works and collaborations.
Yeah, and actually on that, so I think I can speak for you both when you've been very experimental, like in your career. So you've obviously always, tried new things, and really been interested in experimenting per se. So how, did you both see this NFT medium and this kind of new boom approaching, and what were your first thoughts about it? How did you think about it? How did you approach this world?
Yeah, well, I'll start, and we some friends and I, and like colleagues and other artists, were doing a bit of research into more, let's say, extended reality virtual worlds last year, and that started to kind of get into this idea of collectibles, but it didn't really and well, I guess, and as a musician, over the last 5 years, there's been these kind of points where, okay, blockchain, it's going to help with contracts, it's going to help with music publishing and this and that. And there was definitely some great attempts on it, but it never at least grabbed me enough to pull me down into the rabbit hole. And it was really just the end of last year, and on a vacation I was taking in January, where I was just like, wow, this is really happening, and it was just so exciting. And I was really like on vacation, and I sent actually a couple of Instagram direct messages to Blau and Rack. I never met them before, but I was like, hey, they're like musicians. They're doing some really interesting things. I'll just reach out to them. What kind of DM? And they got straight back to me, and the openness and the kind of just, I don't know, just the feeling, that I felt from their openness was part of what really excited me, even more so than the tech. It was just like, well, there's something going on here. People are excited about it, and they seem to want to bring more people in. And that was the initial attraction.
Yeah. I mean, Rich has always been a lot more into technology than I have. I mean, I'm definitely, a pen and paper man kind of at heart. But, I mean, we've both kind of grown up in the digital. Well, we've both grown up from analog to digital. Mm. So we sort of have that foundation, I guess. But I mean, just working in digital just kind of has allowed me to just explore different options. Usually I experiment with media, with different physical mediums, different aesthetics. But in this way, it's just kind of a whole new way, a whole new part of your brain that's kind of being exercised. And it just allows for, so many possibilities. And, without the kind of the baggage of something physical too. You can explore so many different variations, but not having to, sacrifice 5 tubes of paint or something. So, there's kind of a beauty in that. And there's also a beauty in kind of getting to know a new audience, getting to know new artists. Like the digital artists that I've, kind of encountered, through Twitter, just are incredible. And through all the different platforms, it's just kind of mind blowing in a way. It's just so impressive.
Yeah, I think that part maybe reminds both of us, like the original techno community was like, you counted it maybe like in Detroit, where we were going across the border as these, Canadian kids, but it was really like in the hundreds of people. It was like, it wasn't trendy. It was just like, if you liked the music, you were kind of welcomed, and you were spoken to on a very, even level, and you participated and you try to add value. And that's what it really feels like in this community right now. So there is the tech part that grabs me, but it is that kind of community that is really interesting. And for me, one of the things, like I've been on tour for nearly 30 years straight. And so everything that was happening in the world the last year kind of gave me didn't even give me a break. It stopped my whole career. And so I've been spending all this time in the studio, and I'm like, and I say this because what Matt said, as much as being a tech guy, I've been that kind of the analog tech guy. Like, you can see all this kind of equipment around me. And one of the decisions I made at the beginning of COVID was, I'm going to use this time to go fully as deep as possible in my music studio into the digital world. I was using Ableton and this and that, but I wasn't as comfortable with that tech as I was with plugging in a drum machine and this and that. And I wanted to do that because I believe that at that point a year ago, for me as an artist, to take my music further, to take experiences further, it had to be created and be in a more digital pipeline, so that it could connect to animation, that it could connect to other types of forms of medium that were already, natively in the digital domain. So that, that decision also just, inadvertently also put me, as a musician in a great place to participate in this community.
I really like the fact that you both mentioned community, because I think it's probably something that every artist and every person that kind of entered, and probably for Lablau and Rack must have told you this as well, that it is really like an ecosystem of people who are collectively trying to value what they're doing, whether it's art, whether it's music, whether it's technology, whether it's coding. There's like such a big realm of experiences that are taking place that kind of join together as for example what you guys are doing, like an audiovisual collaboration, like, and it really gives space for so many different ways to collaborate, even from people all over the world, which essentially hasn't really happened before. So that is that's it's nice to hear that's what comes out of it, right? Like that community is like that sense of belonging, that it's open, like anybody who wants to add value is welcome, which is very unique.
Yeah, I think that the last, like Matt said, okay, we've been in this stuff for a long time. We've seen the cross from analog to digital in music and in art, and there's just so many similar, well, let's say tools, as in tech and computers that we're using, but even some similar platforms that musicians are using, Adobe products, and visual artists are booting up Ableton to do some sampling and things. So it's just this convergence of creativity, and now this kind of let's say this mechanism like smart contracts, blockchain, NFT, to bring those things together, and it kind of also not only in a creative delivery mechanism, but also an economic mechanism, all these different layers. Like it's not one, it's just all these things have just come together in a beautiful kind of storm. And that kind of roll your sleeves up, because it's still fresh and new. And it's like, okay, I can do this and you can do that. And okay, let's put A, B, C together and see what happens. So it's very, very open-minded and welcoming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think being behind a screen, also kind of allows a freedom for a lot of people. Maybe they're not going to go into the kind of I know sometimes unwelcoming world of a white cube gallery. There can be something kind of not unpleasant, but it can be frightening in a way to kind of go into that. But being able to go to different platforms, being able to go into some of these VR worlds, like is it cryptovoxels or this Synumnium space, I think it is, if I'm saying it right. It just kind of allows people to be themselves in their comfort zone, but experience these things in kind of different ways, without putting themselves out there, because not everybody wants to be out in the world either. So it is it's a brave new world for me too, so it's really quite enjoyable just to have these different experiences, and then seeing people having similar experiences.
Absolutely. And talking about collaborations, obviously, you both, this Fuse Syntax 2 is the second of your first collaboration that you're doing together. So going back to the start of this collaboration between you two, do you want to give a bit of context on how it started and what was it about?
But we were basically, growing up together, as I got into music, Matt was already painting, and there was his works were around the house, and then there was a kind of a pivotal moment, I think, in the early. Well, actually, we did the Fuse before that. I think just two brothers who got along and who found inspiration back and forth. Like I would see a work and be inspired as I kind of went to the other room, to the studio, and vice versa to Matthew.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the big influence at the start of this Fuse collaboration was really electronic music. I mean, because it was so new, because it was electronically based, because there was this degree of computerization. I mean, it just kind of, I mean, with my brother making music and I was trying to kind of communicate these computerized ideas. And so, I mean, it really was at the start of when Rich was kind of solidifying his first full-length album. He'd already had, I mean, quite a few single releases, but it was that pulling together all his kind of material, cohesive material. And at the time, I mean, I had just finished these kind of 2 paintings, which kind of were visually what he was saying musically, and kind of vice versa. And I mean, that ended up being the first Fuse album, Dimension Intrusion, when my artwork became kind of synonymous now to, I mean, what my brother was doing musically.
Yeah, I think we were in the same kind of inspiration pool, you know. So,
Yeah.
you know, like, you know, people, like, some people see Dimension Intrusion, the album, and listen to it, you know, and think like, or ask which came first. But it was like, you know, mass paintings were happening, and then my tracks were happening, and actually, it was at one moment, you know, Matt said, "Oh, yeah." I was like, "Well, I love this painting," and Matt said, "Well, this was." He had the title already. His painting was called Dimension Intrusion. I was like, "Wow, that's perfect. Could I call one of this track is like Dimension Intrusion?" And then there was another, you know, song, you know, called Into the Space, which was some other like ideas that Matt was working on, and then Computer Space. So it kind of just went back and forth. It was just a natural. Like there was never a point where like, let's collaborate because we're brothers. It was just like it just happened, you know. And I think that's the beauty of it, and why, you know, it was really like 2 people who've come, you know, from, you know, there's a connection there. We're brothers. There's like we're hardwired in some similar ways. And Matt had a visual projection of how he was feeling in that moment, and I had a sonic projection, and it was in a time of our lives when we were hanging out a lot, experiencing the same thing. So it just made sense that those things were just nearly synonymous.
Yeah.
And how has this, you know, translated to what it is now, and what's coming Monday on Async?
Yeah, well, you know, like I think like Matt and I, we did a Fuse 25th anniversary box set and brought out some of his old work and my old work that hadn't been released a year or 2 years ago. So that kind of rekindled that thinking of like, well, especially now, because it's like, you know, some of the ideas in the future that we were thinking back then, you know, have materialized, or at least we're closer to that place. So I think that just kind of, you know, brought that back into our minds. And when all this started, you know, of course, we were like, well, we did say, what do we do in this space? How do we collaborate? And we actually tried a couple of things, and you know, we were both learning some animation things. There was some 3D ideas, and when you know, this idea, when we talked to you guys about this layered, you know, situation, which is deconstructive and kind of futuristic and playing with music and art in a different way, in a way that they have to go together and they have to have different combinations that make sense. It was really, honestly, the perfect, you know, the perfect opportunity for us to move forward with these ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it probably just, it kind of brings it full circle for me. I mean, the early paintings were, I mean, in a nutshell, they were trying to depict the idea of computer space. I mean, what's going on within a motherboard and within a CPU. And I mean, at the time, it was like, well, how does electronic music come out of this space? And now we are into the digital world. I mean, we've gone through this transition. You know, we've lived through that. We've been part of that. And I mean, there's always been a parallel. I mean, we got the visuals and we've got the music, and then we sort of put them together. But the beauty about async music is that, I mean, all of a sudden we can have the visuals, have the music, and blend them and integrate them, and then people can collaborate and take them apart and change them. And so it really just, I mean, it takes, I mean, like I had to, once I came up, I had the design, and, you know, Rich saw it and we were thinking about it and what to do with it. But then once we had to deconstruct it, I mean, I had to think about my design in different ways. I mean, I make a painting, and I know the end result and what it's going to look like, but I don't have to deconstruct it in ways that I had to think about, I mean, with this project.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is just, I mean, again, it's another part of my brain working, but it's just, I mean, extends the possibilities of, I mean, my visual work and also my brother's, I mean, musical work.
Yeah, I think another reason why it works both visually and sonically for Matthew and I is that our work is, whatever you want to call it, reductive or minimalistic, but let's say there's space in both of our work. And you know, when we were kind of deconstructing things and I was taking sound away and thinking, okay, well, let's take the sound away and just leave the effects and see how that works. Because, or if not, everything just disappears. And Matt was having the same thing. He would, you know, well, if I take this away, what's underneath? Because you don't imagine what's underneath, because it's just a composite painting. Is it white? Is it black? Or do you see through? Is it, you know, how do these layers interact? So that was very interesting. I had sent Matt some demos. Then he came with this painting, and then, you know, it wasn't just like it made sense, but there was a much more a further exploration for it to all make sense in kind of every iteration. And I think that's what people will be manipulating or playing with on Monday, is like giving and taking different parts of the space away and being able to look and hear from different perspectives.
Yeah, I think probably, you know, and it's exactly what you're describing, you know, one of the real kind of uniqueness and like beauties of like async, well, as a platform as a whole, but specifically within the music realm, is like giving that possibility to people to really kind of decide what they want out of the music that they listen, so they can really play with their own experience. And everybody, you know, has a very different experience. Like when you go to nights out, like clubbing, and you're, you know, listening to music, like, you know, you might hear like specific pieces of that music, or you might see specific aspects of it that, you know, you kind of like have engraved in you, right? And this kind of gives a chance to everybody to really own that, like as actually having like both a layer and a visual that is yours in a way, like that kind of holds that moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, I think everybody hears and sees things differently, right? So it's like sometimes you don't even realize, you know, how beautiful a part is in any medium until you can kind of look at it by itself, or actually take it away and see that then you're missing something, or actually that didn't make sense. You know, I was talking to a friend the other day, and he's more visual, and I was like, okay, well, I'm talking about that sound. He's like, Rich, I hear like 5 sounds. I can't focus on the one sound you're talking about. That's not my language, you know? So I like that in this way, people who may be not so sensitive to audio or visual or both will be able to find a new kind of way in to explore this and find their own beauty in their own kind of remix or manipulation of the parts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just adds like a whole other depth to, say, a static piece of work, whether it's digital or physical. You mean just the taking away, appreciating the different iterations that you can do. I mean, maybe just, really being able to, because the work is kind of so minimal, being able to strip it down even more minimal and learning to appreciate just that one line or just that one square, and it's just, it's going to be really interesting to see, the variations that people come up with and what people kind of gravitate towards, or, just seeing in what directions it goes,
Yeah, hopefully they don't turn all the layers off.
Yeah, we'll have to go back to the drawing board then.
Yeah, but I think as kids, we were looking into the future. Here we are in the future, and now it's also time to look into the next future. And like I'm a musician. I'm in my main, let's say, my main focus, and I like to be able to have the ability to deliver a sonic experience that I have determined. It's like, this is my version. But after that, having something like async music or further technologies in the future where people may want to hear one of my songs, but be in a slightly different situation, say, you know what, this needs to be a little bit mellower today. It's a Sunday. I've had a long week. I want to hear, the Richard's new Fuse track, but it's so, take the kick away and make it a bit of an ambient version. And I want to explore those kind of, possibilities and see how how our work can continue to have different lives and, like Matt said, iterations that are connected to individual tastes or desires at certain moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that's it's interesting that you bring it up, because it's something that I hear a lot from artists and musicians as well, that they actually found super interesting to see what people are doing with, like, both their art pieces and their tracks. And it even gives a hint for further inspiration as well, because you're actually giving power to people who are essentially have probably new fans or old fans, or people that are enjoying particular types of the creativity that you're putting out there. But at the same time, it's almost like a kind of like a circle, like an economy that keeps on giving, right? And it's really interesting, and it's something that I've heard a lot, especially in the last couple of weeks when we launched Async Music for the first time, that like the musicians were like, oh, this has been recorded and this has been recorded. This is kind of cool, and kind of brings up a lot of a lot more creativity as well, and gives collectors like the chance to be creative too.
Yeah. I also think that the whole ecosystem that we're talking about, is somehow based on DIY. See, it's somehow based upon sharing and like open source and transparency, and this, allowing someone to deconstruct, our work is also being transparent. It's like, letting them understand kind of the systems that are in place, and how, and at least in our work, how simple kind of motifs and simple little melodies interplay suddenly and it becomes something much, much grander. So in that way, I hope it continues that cycle, that people will be inspired and perhaps, will then go further into different avenues of how they do music or how they do art, or get into this and be more, more carefree with their transparency in their creativity. Can only inspire more people, right? And I think that is part of the very important ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely. I mean, there's sort of a level of trust that's kind of happening, like a new level of trust that's happening when we're kind of giving these layers out, giving the stems out. And I mean, I'm probably one of I'm pretty kind of careful about where my work goes and what's happening to it. But this is, I think the beauty of the sort of NFT community, kind of with so many people sharing and, buying and supporting. It kind of helps, to foster that kind of trust to say, okay, we're going to put it out there. see what happens. And I mean, hopefully it inspires, as Rich says. I mean, hopefully, you get some new supporters, a new audience. I mean, and it definitely kind of makes me think about how to make new work. I mean, with different levels, different layers, and because with each new layer, I mean, it adds like a different meaning to it too. So, I mean, it is a whole different way to kind of come at your work. I mean, I think in this year of, COVID, we've kind of all had to pivot. And so this is, I could say it's a new pivot for me to, to kind of take my work.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's something that I hear a lot as well. It's like, obviously, like there's, especially with a platform like Async, because of the programmability and the layers and the masters, like it really does also like push, artists to think a bit differently and see, okay, like maybe I can actually like work in this side and like add this little element and, like really play with the technology. And yeah, as you said, like push those boundaries even further, like not only from, a blockchain perspective and the fact that it's, crypto art or crypto music or NFTs, but also from a creative standpoint to really like dig deep into what can be done. So yeah, that's definitely super interesting. Actually, on the new audience, I wanted to ask you both, what has been, obviously like within the electronic music realm and the place that you've been so far, like what is the perception of what you're doing, and also the NFT space as a whole? Like is it something that DJs are starting to look into? Obviously, Freelau and Rack, like they've all kind of, they've been pioneers in the space, but what about the rest of that kind of industry, let's say?
Yeah, I think I find it's kind of like down the middle. Like it's like some people get it right away. Some people are very wary of it, and then they find the amplified negative aspects to kind of dig into. But the the people who are really involved in tech and technology and excited by where things are going, I think are very, very, very curious. I think it's still a developing world, and I think also what excites me beyond kind of the let's say the normal NFT world is just how potentially this can help just reset some of the economics in the music industry, and because I think that's probably at this right now in my industry, that's even more important than anything else. And there's some friends and people I know who don't even find the time or kind of the feeling of being creative because of the economic pressures that are on top of many people now, many artists, just because there's no gigs and there's no music streaming. It's I think a kind of a dark time. So that's also a bit why I want to be part of this, and to also evangelize or help spread the word and look into the kind of the optimistic side of what this tech can really bring people. So but yeah, I think it's still I think there's apprehension but curiosity.
Yeah. I would say the same thing. About the art world. Obviously the art world has paid attention because of the Christus sales of the Beeple and the recent CryptoPunk sales. Like those kind of get the headlines, but there's I hope that more galleries start to represent digital artists. I don't know what a lot of these artists did before. The sort of NFT craze platforms, came out. They're obviously, there's so many talented digital artists out there, and they were just doing it for the love of it because there wasn't a lot of platforms. So I hope it is a wake-up call to galleries, because it's sort of like there's a whole trove of talent just waiting there. On kind of a side note, I teach at the College of Creative Studies in Detroit, and when the people was in the news, I was introducing my students, and so we kind of followed the auction stuff. And they were also, well, I can't know. Most of them were interested, but most of them couldn't wrap their minds around it either. But I just kept saying, this is your future here. This isn't going away. So I was really trying to, instill in them that, NFTs are around to stay. Cryptocurrency is just going to get bigger and bigger. And you should step into this now. The sooner the better. Because I think for the students that did look into it, they came back to me kind of wide-eyed. Just kind of couldn't believe what was happening.
I think Matt said an interesting point in the beginning, just about this idea of going into like a white cube gallery, or just there's creative people out there who may not be prepared to do what it normally takes, whatever that means, to present yourself into a gallery, show your paintings, do the openings, or go onto stage as a DJ and all this, but who are making absolutely incredible works. And I think having this digital economy kind of now amplify the connectivity and the voice of these artists is an incredible thing. So that people can, if they feel comfortable in front of their computer, making cool shit, now they have a pipeline to get it to people, And I think at the moment, there's a lot of people saying, okay, well, it's only helping the big artists. But of course, there's some big artists out there making a lot of money. But if you throw that away and then just look at the actual ecosystem that is being made by artists who didn't have an ecosystem, or a very small one, or were only just doing, some graphic design to make, the ends meet, but they actually had deeper, passions, this can only be a good thing. And I think that's just going to expand, especially as, things like metaverses get more sophisticated and extended reality and all this, and people are, having more implant chips, and we're actually walking around and you'll be seeing visualizations and in real time, and on top of what you're really seeing, and it will be what you're really seeing. So, that's coming, and that needs content, that needs people who can imagine and envision, beautiful new places that would have never existed, or art that would have never been possible in real life. That's where we're going. That's super exciting.
Absolutely. And actually on this metaverse, that obviously, it's such a, I guess in a way, completely like new world for everyone, but it kind of like fits in so perfectly with the time that we're living in, because everybody's been stuck at home, or more or less stuck in their countries. They haven't really been able to travel. And like the experience of the metaverse has brought, like, both from a gallery perspective, like with art, but also from a music perspective, like essentially the possibility of like holding actual events right in your home, like through virtual reality, which is a really interesting new kind of way of experiencing, like, even live performances and even galleries as such. There's a couple of different examples, especially from a gallery perspective, that have opened up within crypto art, and showcasing a lot of this beautiful like digital artwork, but also like a lot of like live kind of DJ sets and experiences that are happening in a metaverse. So that's like, what do you both think about that? Do you think that's potentially like where like some of these live experiences might also translate into?
Yeah, like, Matt said he wasn't, super into, techie, but like, I think we've always, both of us, been interested in using technology to reach beyond our physical, you know, position, because even in the 90s, we were doing, real audio streams in 94, 95. As soon as you could stream, Matt was doing DJ sets and we were doing a weekly thing, just like beaming, ideas, musical more so, but ideas out into space, and hoping there was people out there listening. So, I think, and I think the electronic music community is also spread all over, at least for me, around the world. Like normally I'm traveling and I go this country, this country, this country, but you can never reach everywhere. And sometimes you meet some people in Buenos Aires, and then you go to London, you meet some other, and you're like, wow, those two gangs would really get along, but just it's never going to happen. So I definitely see a lot of positives that when you can sync these people up more, in these real-time conversations. And some of the tech I'm seeing that's being, developed really fast because of everything that's been happening to give people real concert-like experience and being able to chat to people. And I was in a virtual club the other evening where you could talk to people and then hear the music. And it was kind of geeky in the beginning, like Second Lifetime, but it's getting really, really sophisticated. And you can really feel like you're closer to the people than you ever thought possible or ever was possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever thought I'd be, attending art openings in the metaverse. But I mean, over the past, 3-4 weeks, I've gone in and, said hello and listened. And it just, opens up the doors for, artists to explore, to showcase their work, for collectors to be out there. And also it kind of, it opens up a new possibilities for curators also. Property, property in the metaverse is probably as expensive as, real, real things. So, that's a whole different thing. But again, it's just like, we're not going to get rid of the physical world and all go into the metaverse. There has to be a balance. So hopefully there's this kind of nice, jumping back and forth that becomes more fluid over time, because it does have its, issues right now. It's come a long way, but once it becomes more fluid and kind of more natural, there's sort of, there's endless possibilities. So, I think, Rich and I, we started from the point where, virtual reality was, I don't know, like Max Headroom or something. This character, just totally weird. But it's come a long way now, and now we can, we could have an avatar as Max Headroom. We could be him. So
Matthew are Max Headroom.
I certainly feel like Max Headroom sometimes.
I can totally relate with the geeky feeling of like the metaverse. Like I think it's one of the things that me personally I've always thought no, like that's too geeky for me. Like I will not, but actually like the experience is getting so much better than it actually feels like real life, and it's cool. And you have these avatars, but also seeing people and chatting to people, and it's just it's so fascinating. The metaverse is just I think one of those areas that still has to be like fully explored. There's so much more that is going to happen in that front, and
I think it's
exciting.
It's like Matt and I have been really lucky over the years through kind of electronic music and art to travel the world and go to different places and different cultures and just be inspired, and kind of our just our eyes and brains have been expanded by different languages and different rituals, different people, and I think being that fluid, of being able to go and kind of find your place in a new culture, or how to communicate with someone who may not speak your language at all. Like we've had that situation when we've traveled to Japan together. You know, it's a very special kind of like trait. And what I'm trying to say is, I think that's what the metaverse is. It's like going to another world. It's like something that we all need to be comfortable with, because that is the future, going seamlessly between something which is like what we perceive now as real, and then something which is just going to be hanging there, which, you know, maybe the person next to you doesn't see it because they don't need to or don't want to, but that will be something that you're engaging with, and that will just be another way of communication. And you know, I for one want to have enough knowledge and enough language skills to be able to communicate that way and experience it and meet people, because they're, you know, even as much as I travel, there's some places I will never go, and there's some people I will never meet because of that. And if this bridges that physical gap, you know, I'd love to meet that person on the other side, especially if through the digital connection I find out that they have like-minded ideas or shared values.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So going back to, you know, your Monday drop. So if you want to close us off with what's just like a quick kind of what's it all about and what can we expect from it?
I think, you know, like for fans of the Fuse Hawtin, you know, brother collaborations, audio and visual, that I think it sits beautifully in that lineage, you know, sonically and aesthetically. But somehow I find it, I think it's of course by the tech, but also in the colors and the melodies. I think it's playful, and somehow I think it was optimistic. Matt didn't like the word when I used optimistic.
Well, I mean, this is where it gets into collaborating. I mean,
I say optimistic. He says energetic. That's what it was.
I mean, we like to get very detailed with our collaborations. So
is it square brackets for two? Or, we agreed on that one.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. I mean, I definitely think that, I mean, the artwork and the music fit, I mean, perfectly in kind of our arc with the Fuse project. I mean, it's just, I mean, kind of the next step in this canon that, you know, we will continue to create and continue to develop and evolve, you know, as technology evolves and as we grow older. I mean, we'll just, I mean, continue it organically. I mean, kind of as it's always been.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much for your time, and we're looking forward to seeing Fuse Syntax 2 on Async on Monday.
Yeah, definitely. Can't wait. You know.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot. See you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.